Good evening, and welcome to the State of the Game stream for Tough Love Arena. I'm your host, Paul Weeks, and this is the January 2026 installment. We do this every month, and I am about to spend the next somewhere between 5 to 40 minutes telling you all about the state of the game. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, and maybe you're watching us live on Twitch. If not, watching the VOD on YouTube. If you want to catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/mpaulweeks. Let's jump into it. So the big thing that people want to know about is arcade mode. And I've been giving pretty cryptic updates about this. We had like that really flashy trailer, but then otherwise I just keep saying like coming soon, coming maybe next month, and then it keeps getting pushed back. And I saw a little bit of chatter in the Discord of people being frustrated or just confused. I want to peel back the curtain a little bit. I also saw some confusion around the modding update. To explain, modding V2, which was originally going to be packaged with arcade mode, came out alone on January 4th. We decided to do that because I realized I was talking to my team on like January 1st. Arcade mode was still going to be another month away. And I was like, I want to ship something. I want to make this easier. What can we do? And modding was already done and seemed easy to standalone. So it didn't cost us time to ship that separately. My preferred way of doing things would be to ship lots of things quickly. It makes the feedback cycle cleaner, so we're changing less at a time. Sorry it released maybe a little surprisingly or anticlimactically. The original goal would also to be do a state of the game right afterwards if it weren't for MagFest and illness and all sorts of other things coming up that have delayed this stream to January 20th. But I'm glad to see that reception has been positive so far. And I know that Clove and some of the other people helping out are eager, as soon as arcade mode is done, eager to look at some of your future requests and help contribute. So when's arcade mode? I want to make it clear what's happening because I was also very cagey about this. What happened, and I already have the bullet points here, you can read ahead if you wish, but to make a long story short, early 2025, I bought this really cool thing called the TLA Salt and Pepper mod. And I was so impressed that I started talking to the creators who had built this impressive piece of engineering on top of the Tough Love Arena code base in kind of the hardest way to do it without access to the source code. That I knew that these were trusted members of the community. They've been around for a long time. And yeah, the Salt and Pepper mod was made by Clove, Dab, and Kerbo. So I was like, okay, there's already a tier. They've already built something really impressive together. They've all been in the TLA scene for a long time. I really want to finish arcade mode, and I'm clearly not getting it done anytime soon because I'm just so heads down focused on Scramble Heart. So I reached out to them to gauge their interest in helping me finish arcade mode. They were interested, but I also know personally from a lot of projects or a lot of fan projects that I've made that it might sound fun, but it might be way too much work or it might not be something that they're interested in finishing. So this is when I started talking about it as the secret project. And also we spent like a month or so ironing out the details and how this would work. But around the summer, I started mentioning it as the secret project in the state of the game because not for any lack of confidence in the team members, I want to make that explicitly clear. I just have learned to never promise anything to you guys that I can't deliver. And without 100% assurance that it was definitely going to come out, I didn't want to get your hopes up. So I did, but I was excited to talk about something, so it was the secret project. And a couple months in the late summer, they showed me a proof of concept that was very convincing. And that was the point at which I started talking about it more openly. And I want to be clear about people working on this. It is all them. I helped to the degree of giving advice and maybe explaining a few things, and I think I fixed like one bug to unblock them. But this is entirely that team, the arcade team, which again is Clove, Dab, and Kerbo. So I was trying to figure out how best to sort of filter their progress to you all. We had the idea of the trailer. We released that, I think, in October, but as a cool little sizzle thing, and it was great. But at that point, it really was just sort of the proof of concept, because they had spent all those months building the UI to do like dialogue system and the limited animations alongside the dialogues, things that are just necessary to make kind of a story mode work. So that trailer was not an indication that it was done. The trailer was sort of an indication of like what it's going to look like. It was kind of a vertical slice, but it was far from actually being done. Again, these were volunteers. These are people who have school and lives and other priorities, and they'd already been working on this for like 6 months. And I think there's always like an initial burst of energy, and then it starts to set in as, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I tried to make sure that their morale was good while also trying to set the expectations of you all, and I wasn't always successful at that, to which I apologize. And if anyone is curious, it started off as a volunteer thing, but I think it was around the end of the summer once I was ready to announce it and I realized just the scope of what they were accomplishing and what they were going to contribute. I didn't feel comfortable taking their work for free. I felt like that would be taking advantage of the community, and so I offered to pay them, and I have arrangements with them that is not my place to talk about any more than that. If you want to, you can DM them, I guess. Still with the understanding that, like, you know, this is a cool, fun side project. I continue to be incredibly impressed and incredibly proud of the work that they've accomplished. And I think it's safe to say, the last bullet point now, which is that everyone besides Garlic is content complete and currently being playtested by a very small group of trusted insiders, people like Shiggy, if you couldn't guess, so that we can show you like a really presentable V1. It's close. It is very close. It's closer than it's ever been. But as Clove says in chat right now, TLDR, game development is hard, and it's a lot harder if you're a student. But again, I really want to reiterate that this is more than anything I would have ever built. Part of why it's taken this long is because they really bit off a lot. And I'm so excited about that. I was so ready to either give up on it entirely or fart out something really bad. And this is impressive, and I'm proud to include it as part of Tough Love Arena. And for that very reason, I want to make sure it comes out right. I don't want them to have spent all this time and effort only for the thing to, you know, get rushed out at the last minute. So, it is coming along. It's very close to done. I appreciate all y'all's patience. Unfortunately, that did disrupt a few of my plans, one of which, and, you know, just the reality of how this worked out and life and scheduling. My hope had been to release this before the end of 2025, transition the game out of beta around the new year, and then like tie that into the birthday tournament. Clearly, that didn't happen. And now it will come out when it comes out, and that's perfectly fine. But that's on me for not reacting sooner and replaying the birthday tournament. So I think it's cool to move on at this point, and we'll have Q&A at the end, of course. But I'm happy to announce there is a birthday tournament. It's still happening. It will be February 6th. It's in a couple weeks. Early February. Standard deal for major tournaments. There's prizes for entering. There's prizes for top 8. There's premium accounts. There's exclusive skins. If anyone knows from the Halloween tournament, I've been a little bit more generous with skins recently. I won't make any promises now, but it is very much in your interest to join. Challenge.com/TLAB Day 26. We'll also post it in the announcements channel as soon as the stream is over. Signups should be open. As always, it replaces TLG if you're new to the scene. So, excited for that. I'll be working with the usual TOs and doing comms. It'll be on Shiggy's stream as the last couple of majors have been. If I have some Scramble Heart people in the chat who haven't played TLA much and want to check it out, I think these majors are super cool. Shiggy puts on a great production. We usually get some really hype competition, especially in top 8. I don't know if we're doing an April Fool's one, so this might be the last one for a minute, at least usually for 3 months. So it's a big occasion that we do about 4 times a year. I wouldn't miss it if I were you. Now, as always, my brief Scramble Heart City update. What have we done since the last State of the Game in December? We exhibited at MagFest. We released probably the most exciting thing on here. We released character number 6, Goth, which I'm very proud to say it seems pretty well received. I have not looked at the survey results except for the stage and music feedback because I had meetings earlier today with Mike and M respectively. But I haven't peeked ahead at the character feedback or anything else, so I don't know for sure. Maybe I'm going to get there and see that everyone hates Goth. But the vibe I got from the Discord was that people were pretty excited about her. We added 2 new stages. Cathedral's also not complete. It's going to get so much better in the next 2 weeks, but we decided it was playable in its current form, so we threw it up there. But very excited for you all to see that. Added a new song, which is my current favorite song of the game. I had it on loop the whole playtest. Our next one is, speaking of playtest, our next one is February 20th, which is a week after EXP Pittsburgh, if you're planning to attend that. Upcoming events that I can announce because we're confirmed for are a tournament at Frosty Fausting's, tournament at EXP Pittsburgh, and hopefully a booth at Combo Breaker. I might actually get a vibe check on how many booths we should get, because I think last year we started with 2 setups and ended the weekend with 3 setups, and I think all 3 setups stayed pretty busy. This year I want to get enough space for at least 3 setups, and the question is, do I go to 4? We shall see. Cool. And now the Q&A. What happens to arcade mode on April Fools? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if we're going to do another April Fools, essentially. Real talk. It's work. And it was a lot of work the first time to support community mods in 2024. Like, kind of too much work. And it was a lot less work last year, granted. But I also know a lot of the people who were like contributing to that are maybe a little burnt out, or maybe are instead potentially contributing mod stuff to arcade mode. I don't know. We shall see. But I think more than likely we won't do it. Last year might have been the last year. If we did do it, then, as Clove said, for technical reasons, it would just be the default cast. This is also something that is now possible as of, I think, last year. Early years, because we started this in 2021. Granted, the changes were much more mild back then. But back then, it would, like, the April Fool's character replaced the character. And you could not access normal beef for the duration of however long we had the patch up. Now, in code, they sort of coexist. And in fact, last year's April Fool characters are still in the code base. They're just sort of turned off and hidden. So yeah, as Clove said, we can totally have it so when you go into certain game modes, like combo trials or arcade mode, it would just switch over to the base cast. People are more than welcome to self-organize a modded tournament. If people want to do like a modded tournament for April Fools, I'd be happy to comms, but I just don't think I can afford to provide official support to it. Yes, so we have a higher resolution of the sprites now in the game. Not accessible now, but we're adding them for arcade mode for the blown up sprites that are used in like the cutscenes. And as Clove says, those will be available to modders. I don't know if were we gonna toy with doing like the high resolution option where you can opt into having the really big res sprites for gameplay too. Thank you for bringing it up, Clove. Clearly, I forgot about it. So, at least definitely as a modding tool and as a modding resource, they will be there. And they'll theoretically be there in game too. The original files animated and illustrated by Amy are pretty high res. The characters aren't this big because the way I did the sprites in TLA is stupid and insane. I can talk about that more if you're curious. But so it has a lot of empty headroom in it, but the sprite images, the source ones are 2,000 pixels tall. And the ones you play on are 600 pixels tall. And if you're on mobile or low res, it's 300 pixels tall. So we are now adding another step in between, which is 1,200 pixels tall. Yeah, the reason, if people weren't curious, the reason why we don't use high-res sprites, or we didn't use them before now, is the performance. The performance is real bad on canvas. Real stinky. Kerbo asks, Paul, when will you rework how projectiles work, and why is it the TLA 10th anniversary? I was just having a conversation about this with Clove, which is, I learned my lesson, and in Scramble Heart City, everything is a body. So projectiles get treated exactly the same as characters and puppets. To not recreate the issues that we had in TLA, which, for those who don't know, but you would discover if you did modding, projectiles look like characters, and they have a lot of the same options as characters, but not all the same options. And you can define sequences, and you can define frames, but they can't do everything that a character can do. And that's not strictly necessary from a design standpoint. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do some of that stuff. But the way the game is written, that is not an easy switch to flip. That is a big rewrite. TLA is very object-oriented, and we have the fighter class, and we have the projectile class. And I think it gets to reuse some of the basic fundamental stuff. Anything that's like on the frame level that deals with timing and boxes is shared, because fighters have frames and projectiles have frames. But when it comes to like interaction and canceling, where the fighter is checking like, should I cancel? Did I hit someone? Do I have meter? Can I do this? Should I hit the ground? That kind of stuff. A very small subset of that is duplicated into the projectile class. It's a nightmare. So many lessons learned. This is why you should never make your dream game as your first game, because you just don't know what you're doing. Not that I have any regrets. And to be clear, I've made some stuff before TLA, so it could have been much worse. I'm actually quite proud of what I accomplished, given my experience level. But I'm glad to see Clove agrees. SHD codebase is a lot better than TLA for real. Book Jump B, how you fix? Okay. Let's talk about it. Oh, God. Small tangent, Khieu asks, Paul, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like remotes? Remotes was the cursed specific workaround for the original Noodle Fist to work, which wasn't a projectile. It was technically part of Noodle. And yeah, the answer of how much I like it is 0. Is it even supported anymore? Is anything using it in the base game? I don't know. Lessons learned. Okay, so Book had a bug that I can reproduce very easily with a small change. Okay. There we go. Okay, this is the bug. So, what is happening? If I hit him, he'll recover. But he is currently stuck doing normal jump B forever. He is currently on frame 900. The high hit stop just made this really easy to reproduce. We were confused why this was happening. Normally, actions have a duration. Most actions in the game have a duration. And when they're done, you return to idle. But a few of them, and Book has actually more than one of these moves, specifically air moves, will have the property of do this until you land. They have infinite duration. Oh, wait, oh my god. You can act? I don't know if that makes sense. But stuff like this, if you were to somehow get really high, he would do it until he lands, right? But then it would notice that he lands. Same with this. And so those actions have infinite duration because I know that because of physics, they will eventually end. And this was added in this patch because it was something I added to make Tanukis work more consistently. Because there was an issue where Tanukis, if they hit you, bounce off you, right? But if they don't hit you, they just go straight to the ground and they slide. And there was an issue where if they hit you on like the frame that they would land, or the frame before they landed, they would hit you, experience hit stop, and then land. When I wanted them to bounce. And it's because they would have like the bounce queued up as a cancel, but you can't cancel during hit stop. And it acts that way for a couple frames. It's just repeating itself. And then on the very next frame, it ends hit stop. And one of the first things it checks is, am I done with what I'm doing? Yes, I'm done with what I'm doing. Reset to idle or neutral. And then, am I touching the ground? If so, go to grounded state. And it makes that check before it makes cancels. Which is normally what you want, because that allows you to like go from jumping, and then the exact frame that I land, let's say it's that, maybe it's that one? Okay, I was wrong, so I'm gonna have landing recovery. But normally this is good because it means like as soon as you finish something, I had one frame gap there because I'm being fast and loose with this, but you could go straight from airborne into acting, right? It resets you, and then it checks the cancels. And the problem was that the act of resetting from airborne to grounded then like wiped out the bounce cancel. So I changed the logic so that if you had a cancel queued up, then you should do that instead of the stand ground check, right? That makes sense to me. And now the Tanuki, even if it hits at the very tip, will freeze for hit stop and then bounce because it checks for the bounce before it checks for the ground. The problem with Book is this move has two versions. You'll see right now in the little text, it says Book Special Puppet Pipe. But if I don't have the book, it's Book Special Lonely Pipe to describe heavy attack when you don't have access to the book. It's a different move with the same input. And the way that works is when he's in the air, he has both of those cancels present on that button. He both sees the fact that he can cancel Heavy Punch into Book Pipe and Heavy Punch into the axe handle. But those moves have conflicting restrictions. You cannot cancel into the Book Pipe if you don't have the pipe. You cannot cancel into axe handle if you do have the pipe. And that's what normally makes it work. The problem was, I hit you with this. During hit stop, I press C to cancel into heavy. At the time that it makes the determination of what's my cancel, the book was out. So it queues up the lonely heavy, the one with the axe handle. It queues that up. And then during hit stop, the book returns to me. So when hit stop ends and it goes to perform the cancel, it can't, because that's an illegal cancel. You cannot go into axe handle if you have the book. But it doesn't know to give that up. So it thinks it just like, it defers it for another frame. This didn't matter before because you just wouldn't see it. Maybe it would like seem to eat your input and then you would land. And it didn't matter that you had this cancel queued up that you couldn't do because when you land, it just gets wiped out. And so it was specifically, yes, you had to hit with jump B, you had to queue up a jump heavy, and then the book needed to return to you during hit stop. That is why it's really easy to reproduce if I just increase the hit stop on jump B. Right? I queue up the heavy, and then the book returns to me, and then I can't do anything. That was a wild one. And I actually discovered it while fixing a different bug with Goth, which was that her jump A, she got this cute little flutter on her jump A, right? Where she can boop, boop. And there's this really long delay after the first one, because I didn't want you to be able to very quickly ascend, but I also didn't want that to feel unresponsive. So she queues that up really early. But like here, I pressed the button, it's not coming out, and then it comes out. So it queues my cancel, but it won't do it until like frame 30 or whatever. It never does it before frame 30. If you did that while you were landing, like this, and then you tried to queue up the next one here, she would not be allowed to land because she had a cancel queued up. And she would hover. But eventually jump A would end, and then she would go to idle. I wouldn't call it an input thing, it is a action cancel queuing thing. And this is just all the glue that has to be in the background to make buttons feel good and to make combos feel the way you expect them to feel. I've learned so much more about it. It's so much more complicated in this game than TLA for a lot of reasons. Some of it relating to teams, some of it relating to hit stop being a lot less predictable in this game. Some of it relating to having directional inputs, more directional inputs, and multi-button inputs introduce so many freaking problems. That was the Goth problem, and while I was fixing that, I realized the thing that was stopping her from landing, realized it was also affecting the book. Paul, when will assist lockout be added? What do you mean assist lockout? There's already some assist lockout. Do you mean like during DHC, that bug ticket I made? Lots of people reacting to the hit stop in the demonstration. iPad asks, Okim asks, what is your favorite TLA and SHC normal? Okay. SHC, it's probably this. This. Let's separate this into two things. What's my favorite normal as a designer, and what's my favorite normal as a player? For TLA, my favorite normal as a designer is Roundhouse on Onion. I think it looks really good. I think it is interesting in gameplay, both how it's contextually unsafe, sometimes uses a poke. It's so versatile. I may have mentioned this before. Really early versions of TLA. Let's pop on over. I knew we weren't going to have that many buttons, right? And I was trying to think, how do I fit all the tools that a character needs into so few buttons? And one of the original ideas was for the carbs. From a flavor perspective, I was in love with the idea of the little double slap thing. And I knew that their heavy was going to be really long and potentially slow. And maybe a little awkward, right? So their light, in order to compensate, because they weren't going to have a nice like mid-range poke like this, right? Or more like sweep. Noodle's light attack, originally, this was like the range of a normal light attack, but this had the range of like sweep, if not meat punch. You can tell from the art, even. It used to be small hitbox, big hitbox. And in my mind, this was great because that way Noodle had a button for every distance. But their mid-range button was kind of artificially slow because you had to get through the first hitbox, right? Yeah, it's still definitely longest light, but like it used to compare with, even the animation I think has been updated compared to like the original Rough, the very first version Rough. The hitbox on this used to be basically like meat heavy. And in my mind, my original thought and hope was like, this is great because now this one button serves multiple functions. It's both your Abare button and a poke. Clever me. In playtest practice, this changed before the beta, I discovered very quickly that because the button worked both as a poke and as Abare, the optimal Noodle playstyle was to just press that button because it did everything, right? It was not fun. It was not fun to play with. It was not fun to play against. It was so reductive because Noodle's strength then wasn't even the whip. It was the fact that they just had this ignorant button that covered this huge area in front of them and was super active and was basically never wrong. And also I think the hitboxes were taller, so similar to, it has this issue still a little bit. I've nerfed it a lot over the years, but it also would like control the air the entire time. And it was a light, so yeah, it was plus. It was stupid. It was stupid. That was very humbling. So that's all to say when I say that as a designer, I like Onion Roundhouse. I like it because it can contextually do a lot of different things. So it is a rich tool. Like one of Rice's problems was that Rice's original two specials were both kind of too specific. There was like almost a pure combo, maybe anti-air tool, and a pure defensive tool. And a lot of other characters' defensive tools pull double duty as, yes, they're defensive tool, but maybe also an interesting combo piece. But not Rice, right? Not Rice on like teleport. And we did stuff like add swipe, and we did stuff like add quick port to make it a little bit more interesting, and I don't know what I did to SWAT. I did a lot of things to SWAT, but that was something I was always conscious of, and I felt bad when one button was too narrow because characters don't have that many buttons. So I love Onion Roundhouse because it is both a poke, but it's not the best poke, and it is a combo tool, but it is one of the few combo tools in the game that like has potentially very different consequences based on the range, and it looks really cool. As a player, my favorite normal in Tough Love Arena is probably meat heavy. Just gets the job done. All reliable. For Scramble Heart, as a player, my favorite normal is this. I love this ignorant ass button. I was having a conversation with Dacid Bro at MagFest, and his initial impression was that he was concerned about Goth being too strong against certain characters. Especially, slow, chonky Book. And it turns out Book is actually pretty good against Goth. In part because that's a very powerful anti-zoning tool. But I would say, just as importantly, is the fact that Book can do this. From this far away. If Goth ever commits to something incorrect, or wants to set something up, or tries to like do a slap shot, Book can just snipe and then confirm into full combo. People react to the pipe and people react to like, ooh, air dash pipe, but dash heavy is my favorite button. For as a designer, there's so many more options. This is a lot harder to think of. It might be Gain Launcher. Let me think about this for one more second. Goth has a lot of multi-purpose normals. It'd be easy to pick her. And she's new and she has recency bias. But I think I actually really like Gain Launcher. Again, as a designer, I think it's beautiful because of its downsides. I love Gain Launcher because, to me, Gain Launcher is a very important part of what makes Gain weak. And as a player, what you need to learn to do. Gain, as the reputation goes, is big rushdown boy, and he benefits from a lot of his buttons moving him forward, right? And, basic thing you'll learn first. Not that Gain is weak, but something that gives him a weakness. But something you learn, and what I would recommend to people, is, you learn your string that you can hit confirm into hit or block. So maybe my hit confirm string is just, do the whole magic series on the ground. And if it was blocked, then go to a safe ender like Rush Punch or Knee to try and do some bullshit on the other side. Do the full thing. Oh, he blocked the launcher. Okay, make it safe. Or if he got hit, then do combo, right? And Gain, because Gain has so many forward advancing moves, he is uniquely good against push block. Everyone knows about this. I get a lot, like, you know, that gets pushed. Most characters look like this. But Gain looks like that. But if you autopilot and do Magic Series into launcher while the opponent is mashing push block, you could get this. It whiffs. And if it whiffs, you can't cancel to make it safe. That's, to me, what makes Gain interesting. Currently, as some players then eventually learn, if you make your string a little bit shorter and you cut out the 5C, 2B has momentum. The way characters move can be in a couple different ways. This is a discrete move where he moves and then stops. So by the time you're making contact and can cancel into 2C, he no longer has momentum. He's done moving. Whereas 2B has continuous momentum. So if you cancel that into launcher, he stays a bit closer. That is then removing one attack from your hit confirm chain. And this may not work exactly like that forever. And I think there are ranges where... Okay, so you can get the launcher pretty reliably. The next level of this is the overhead. And that also would happen there. Really, like 2B is your one like anti-push block button. The next thing you do is guaranteed to connect, but really only off of this. So that's why I like this button. Because as you get better at the game, as you get better at Gain, as you get better at fighting Gain, you realize that this move is a liability in a way it isn't for most characters. Most other characters can just brain dead, do their ABC into their launcher, and then make it safe. But Gain has to be a little bit more thoughtful. And playing against Gain, it is so satisfying to get him to whiff this. Or this. Fills my heart. Launcher is pretty good on a lot of characters. It used to be like art accurate. It used to have half the range of this, and that I felt was too bad. It felt too inconsistent because you would do like, there were situations where you do like this and it could whiff. What was the range? It was like, that would whiff on the old hitbox, so we buffed it a bit. Can't you push block every character at 2C range? Yes, but I think most other characters are already more susceptible on having a lot of buttons whiff because of push block. And to me, it is the Achilles heel to Gain's otherwise ignoring push block gameplay. So that's my favorite normal. Also, it looks cool and it's satisfying. I love when something starts like this as like an aesthetic choice, and then naturally through playtesting or iterating, I discover a way that it can be mechanically more interesting and more deep. I love a lot of normals in this game. There are very few normals I don't love. I will say a disappointing normal that I had much higher hopes for, but kind of is just useless now. And people who have been watching dev streams for a long time will probably know this. It was this button. This button is extremely active. And originally I had all these ideas for it. Originally I thought people would be doing like this. Oh my gosh. There used to be setups, or I know that there exist like pretty reliable frame kills for this to be like +8 on meaty. Turns out that's just not a very good option. It's probably much more valuable to do some kind of like ambiguous cross up or ambiguous high-low than just plant a button. There's a lot of ways you can plant a button. This one didn't really work out the way I envisioned. It is one of the few moves in the game right now that is punishable on hit. Which doesn't matter as much in a versus game. A lot of old versus games, like all the normals were punishable on hit because you're canceling them. This one didn't quite work out. It's also death on whiff because push block, yeah, and it lasts so long. I used to have like sequences like or it was like yeah, stupid stuff like that. Anyways, cool. The chat moved quite a bit while I was talking about normals for 20 minutes. Also, it is 9 o'clock. But just to recap for people, V2 is out of modding, arcade mode is coming, and we have a birthday tournament on February 6th. Please sign up. You get free stuff just for showing up and checking in and playing your matches. So even if you go 0-2, you'll get a bunch of free skins on your account. And that's it for me this month. I'll say it as I do many at the end of many of these. It is a privilege to have people still show up and want to hear me talk about this game that has been out for 5 years. It is a privilege, and I am extremely grateful. So, thank you.